Why, good evening, cretins, and welcome to my... Oh, wait, that's the other guy.
Welcome to my house.
There we go. Welcome to today's little vinyl video, where today we shall be discussing the ancient art of punk rock. And my history with punk rock. And for those of you cretins who don't know what punk rock is, it is in fact an ancient art form that encompasses a lot of rage, a lot of instrument throwing, and a lot of shouting. Sometimes singing, sometimes even harmonies.
He's a demon on wheels. Turn, turn, turn.
And sometimes it goes very, very fast. And sometimes it doesn't. Now, let's be perfectly honest. I am not a punk aficionado, nor do I even consider myself a punk rocker. Because I used to be a synth kid, and the way I got into punk rock was to sort of latch onto the melodic side of it, because I was used to synthesizer music that had a lot of very nice, sometimes like very clean, very simple harmonies. A lead over a bass, over a simple drum beat. And what I really latched onto about melodic punk in the mid to late 90s was its simplicity and its melodic tunefulness, which is something you wouldn't normally associate with punk rock, I guess, but I'm no more ashamed to admit that I got into punk rock in the early Offspring and Green Day days. And here they are. And these would be Smash by The Offspring, the previous album Ignition by The Offspring, and Green Day's Dookie, which is a lovely, lovely name for a lovely, lovely record. These, in particular, I listened to a lot in the end of the 90s, like 97, 98, and special thanks to Summer B76 on my Discord for actually gifting me this original pressing of Smash. And you can tell because someone turned the track listing upside down. I love this one, and I love this one, and I love this one. This one has Ernie airbrushed out on the back. Original pressings of Dookie had a little puppet of Ernie from Sesame Street sort of lounging around in the mosh pit there. I had the opportunity to get one that had an Ernie in it, but then I would have missed out on this lovely insert that has all the lyrics. And see, I owned all of these lovely records on CD back in the day, and those CDs have disappeared completely into the ether, probably banged up, scratched, and left somewhere outside of Syracuse, New York, I would believe. So anyway, that's what I considered punk rock back in the day, and I used to listen to a lot of this, and I still do, and I still love putting it on, and I am not ashamed to. Because the reason I keep bringing up shame is because I know there are people watching this video already going, what in the fuck is this guy on about? Punk rock started in the 70s. Have you heard of The Clash? Have you heard of Joy Division? Have you ever listened to a Black Flag album or any of, everything a punk rocker is supposed to be into before they start turning their nose up at these skate punkers from the 90s. What do they know about true punk rock? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know what today's punk rock scene knows about punk rock. I don't give a shit. I thought this was tuneful as hell, and I enjoyed it. Now, later in life, I would start to get into some truly weird shit. This is Dead Cross, which is a supergroup involving Dave Lombardo and Mike Patton doing standardized hardcore, like 90s punk rock hardcore. This is Future of the Left, a very, very strange Welsh punk rock / synth band. He's a lovely lyricist, and he loves making a lot of squelchy, weird noises with his guitar. And this is, I believe, a Dutch band called Izah, I-Z-A-H, who creates like this sort of sludgy hardcore, lots of shouty vocals, and sometimes they pick up the pace, but most of the time it sounds like they're falling asleep, and all of the track numbers are at least 10 minutes in length. In fact, the tracks are so long that they had to split up track number 4, and there are only 4 tracks on this vinyl. They had to split it up into 2 parts because the track in itself wouldn't fit on one single side of vinyl. Lovely piece of vinyl, by the way. It is, of course, colored. And of course, speaking of weird punk rock, we must not forget the esoteric weirdness that is Mindless Self-Indulgence, which is part industrial, part jungle, part 90s hip-hop, and then all-out punk rock attitude. These are two of their vinyl albums. This one has artwork by Jonan Vasquez of Invader Zim fame, and this one is just really, really hard to find. And this one has a lovely, lovely title. It's called You'll Rebel to Anything as Long as It's Not Challenging. So how, you may ask, did I get into this sort of weird punk rock when I was all about the melody and all about the fanciness and all about the cutesy? Well, the Danish punk rock underground scene, there was one, and I was technically part of it. I mean, I showed up when I was a teenager to these floor shows at the local venue where young and untested punk bands would just play on the floor, and if, you know, someone accidentally got hit in the head with a guitar, that was his problem, I guess. And lovely people would pick him up off the floor, nose bleeding, and he'd be sent up to the washroom to clean himself up, and you'd see him 5 minutes later drinking a beer and happily moshing around as if nothing would have happened. I've attended tons of those shows, and later I got to I went to university with, and actually got to be a little friendly with, this lovely band called the Psych Project, who play the sort of hardcore punk rock that is just abysmally heavy, lots of shouting and screaming, no singing, no clean singing whatsoever. It's all riffs and madness. Lovely people, and I happen to have two of their albums on vinyl. These are kind of hard to find, I guess, especially this lovely white vinyl version of their second album, or I guess technically their first real album, because their first release was an EP, but this lovely white version of Daikini, which I bought from the drummer himself, and I should have gotten him to sign it when I did, but I didn't. But anyway, incidentally, that drummer guy now plays in a space hardcore band called LLNN, which is also very crushing and very heavy and lots of shouting indeed, and they also have a keyboard player. So it's some very strange music, but I'm very much into it. And that leads me to sort of wonder idly to myself, what is it that attracts me to the sort of punk rock that does not involve melodies, sometimes even cleanly defined rhythm patterns? And I think it is the utter chaos of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be tuneful, but I truly enjoy seeing musicians on stage be very, very interested in the music they're playing, let's just say. What I really can't stand is either shoegazing bands who just stand perfectly still and concentrate on playing, or pandering to the audience, that sort of, you're the best crowd we've ever played to, and they've said this a million times across every venue on the tour they've been on. No thank you. I don't want anything pre-planned. I don't want any like agreed upon antics, and certainly I want my musicians to look like this will be the last show they've ever played. And the Psych Project was one of those bands. They went on stage and they just tore everyone a new one, and on to the next show, which they also played as if it was the last one ever. I guess I got into this because I happened to watch a video of an American band way early in my formative years, discovering hardcore and punk rock that didn't necessarily have clean vocals or identifiable verse-chorus structures and all that. I saw this one band that just looked like they were about to physically explode on stage. And I think everyone has guessed by now which band I am referring to. It is, of course, the Dillinger Escape Plan, which was, sadly past tense, was one of the best, I guess they're called mathcore, but technically it's just hardcore with really weird time signatures, and it's blisteringly fast, and the stage show they put on is nothing short of madness. And I remember the first time I listened to, how did Devo get in here? I remember the first time I listened to a Dillinger Escape Plan song. I was in a record store that I ended up working at, and the clerk behind the counter, whom I was friends with, said, I see the path that you're on, young Jedi. Let me introduce you to this. And he put on some headphones on my head, and there was a little CD player on the counter, and this is what, customers would come up and say, hey, I want to listen to this album. Can I listen to it before I buy it? Sure. But he yanks out the CD, puts it in, won't let me see the cover. It's this one. It's Dillinger Escape Plan featuring Mike Patton. Only 4 tracks on this, but holy shit. The first sound that pops out of the speaker is like being hit with a freight train. It is blisteringly fast. There's screaming and noises, and the drummer sounds like he's having an epileptic fit, and it is glorious. I've never heard anything like it, and to this day, it is still one of my favorite records, so I of course had to get it on vinyl. Apparently it's kind of rare, and apparently there are tons of different versions of this in very, very small quantities. I just got the standard black one. I just snapped it up because I didn't know if it was gonna go out of print or whatever. Apparently there's like a million different colors of it in like 20 copies each or something. And the funny thing about the other Dillinger Escape Plan albums, this is Miss Machine, their follow-up, and this is Ironworks, which is a lovely, lovely album where they tried to go a little electronic on it and still, sort of weird out in the way that I guess technically only Dillinger can truly weird out. Lovely, lovely gray metal-ish vinyl. And I started listening to these guys because of the energy they put out at their shows and the amount of effort that went into the almost suicidal performances they put on. And they remain probably my favorite live band of all time. And sadly, the thing about their vinyls is that they seem to be in relatively short print numbers for a band that is, I realize, one of the most popular hardcore bands out there. They almost cracked the mainstream at one point. But their vinyls just sort of seem to disappear after they've been out for a bit, and so there is, in fact, one album missing in between these 2 lovely ones. Oh, look at this die-cut album, by the way. This lovely... Could you get out here, please? Look at this. Look at it. Look at it spin. It spins. Yes. Lovely. This is Option Paralysis, which is a weird title because their previous guitarist actually was paralyzed from the neck down in a car accident. But anyway, there's an album missing between, where'd the other one go? Between these 2, and that is an album called One of Us is the Killer, which is an awesome title for an album, but it's missing. I didn't pick it up because, it's one of those things. It was okay. It wasn't really setting my shit on fire at the time. And then I realized, you know what? I just have to own everything these guys have ever made, except for their debut album, which I don't have either for some reason. This is like the story of my vinyl collecting. I get into a band. I get like really into a band, and then I start picking up everything they've ever put out, and I always manage to somehow skip one. There's always one album that just sort of eludes me, like in a fit of bad decision making or I suppose financial situations, or for whatever reason, there's always one album I fail to pick up, and then I just kick myself for the rest of my life for not doing it. So I'm pretty sure every other person who collects or even just casually buys vinyl has had this happen to them. A sort of, it was here a minute ago. Where did that lovely album I've always wanted on vinyl, where did that fuck off to? It's nowhere. That's where it is. That was my sort of weird, sort of not very traditional, I guess, punk rock story, which is that I'm not really into punk rock per se, as in the scene. And not to say I don't like the spiky hair and the leather and all of that shit, but I mean, I'm very picky when it comes to my punk rock. Either it's got to have a tremendous sense of melody, or it has to be absolutely blisteringly chaotic and lots of screaming, or you can sort of combine the two as as these lovely Dutch gents have done, which is sometimes it's really slow and really plodding and it's just like one long chord and the dude just screams his head off. And then other times they get a little melodic. Someone picks up an acoustic guitar and the rest of the band just go, what the fuck's happening? I guess we'd better play along. And they do that for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then it's back to more shouting. And then a weird sample of like news clips about the Unabomber plays, and it's all very strange. I quite like that. I think I like my punk rock a bit strange, which is weird. I know, coming from a guy who used to listen to Green Day and the Offspring, that's about as not weird as you're gonna get, but someone's gotta start somewhere. Honestly, what I like about punk rock is the energy of it. When I listen to a punk rock album, what I want to sort of imagine myself is somewhere in that mosh pit, watching these people absolutely blow up on stage, guitars and drum kits flying everywhere, someone's getting hoisted onto the stage and then thrown back out, and bloody noses everywhere. That's the sort of lovely, sophisticated show I enjoy attending. So yes, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, do whatever you youngsters do, but do leave me a comment, as long as it is not a comment that says you know nothing about punk rock, you absolute cretin, because I'm quite well aware of that. Thank you. But leave me a comment anyway and tell me the best punk rock show you've ever attended. Tell me one of those times when things went absolutely off and someone almost went home with a missing limb. The sort of shit I like. So anyway, thank you so much, and thank you again to Summer for gifting me the vinyl of an album that I have loved since I was must have been 16, 17, 15 maybe even. I was young. That was the first guitar, where is it? This was the first album that had like loud guitars on it that I really enjoyed. Before that, I was like, yeah, well, guitars, it's kind of a, I associated loud guitars with like drugged out, stupid metal bands like Guns N' Roses. Yes, I said it. Fuck Guns N' Roses. Fuck Motley Crue. Fuck all of that 80s, early 90s. Oh, we're so fans. Kind of bullshit. This was the first guitar album I really enjoyed. So thank you very much, Summer, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to badmouth Guns N' Roses in front of everyone. So again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, around the Crowe stream.